Welcome to Make and Decorate, a podcast for makers who love to sew, quilt, and decorate. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Make and Decorate podcast with Stephanie. It is also the final episode of season 4. Woohoo! We made it through another season. Yay! It has been a whirlwind of a season with so many amazing guests and fun and educational solo episodes with me. Thank you so much for listening and making this podcast part of your creative life. I will upload some favorite episodes over the summer to keep you entertained while you enjoy your summer sewing and crafting activities. The Make and Decorate Friends group is growing and more of you are joining us. Thank you. This group is private and free and is on the Mighty Networks platform. You can access it on the computer at mightynetworks.com and just type in Make and Decorate Friends to join. Or an easier way is to click the invite link on the podcast blog and you'll be instantly added to the group. That link is also on the show notes tab of your podcast platform. So if you look at the note, sometimes I guess they will call it notes or details. Click on that. I have the link there as well. We've had some really great chats this past week and more projects have been posted. So come on over and join us. I probably have driven everyone crazy though this past week with all of my gardening updates and photos. So yeah, but it's fun. It's really fun to see and catch up with everyone and what you're making and doing. Also, if you're not a patron, check out my Patreon page at patreon.com/makeanddecorate. Here you can subscribe to support the podcast and receive a monthly bonus episode year-round, which means you get a new episode per month when the free podcast is on hiatus. My guest on this episode is Vicki Holloway from the My Creative Corner3 podcast. Vicki returns to chat with me about quilting, crafting, and gardening. For time reference, we recorded this episode in mid-February. But first, let's do a little bit of chit-chat. I hope you all had a nice Memorial Day weekend holiday and that you had time to share with your family and loved ones. Many of us know or have fallen service members taken from active duty. My brother is a retired Army reservist. He just retired this past year, and he was part of an award ceremony in his city where they named a block in honor of a young Marine corporal who died in action 7 years ago. She was 23 years old. Just too young to go. It's been a tough week and a half for all of us. I won't go into detail because that would be an entirely different podcast. But I do want to say that my heart is broken over what happened in Uvalde. And part of my coping process is to make something with my hands. And in this instance, I went to our mending pile. We have like a big pile of mending, a basket full. A lot of my husband's pants and shorts, sometimes shirts. But in this instance, I pulled out a pair of my husband's shorts. It's his favorite pair of shorts, I guess, is what he says. And there was a huge hole in them. And I hand mended that hole with a patch and visible stitching. I know many people who sew and quilt do not like to mend clothing. You see all of those memes about, yes, I sew, will I mend your clothes or hem your pants? No, I will not. I think that is true for a lot of us, to not do that just for anyone. But for my husband, I don't mind it at all. It's something I put my love into, just like cooking. you put love into the food that you prepare for your loved ones. And that mending project was just what I needed to help lift my spirits, just even so slightly. It was enough to get me to move forward a bit and not stay stuck in a dark and depressed state. And you all know you were probably at the same, place that I was. And if you're feeling down, try something creative, even for 15 minutes. Sketching, hand stitching, knitting, and even cooking a special meal. It might help. It probably will help. And it doesn't even have to be anything that really requires great focus or detail. I think even just sketching and doodling on a pad of paper is enough to put your mind into that creative side and to help the racing thoughts and the emotional, drainage that's happening to you. It helps it, I think. Anyway, moving on. The weekend before last, we went on a road trip. It was just a day trip to Iowa. So we drove out there, and it was for my niece Emma's 6th birthday. It was a nice day weather-wise. It was a little chilly, but my sister has this really nice gas fire pit. And it was perfect for that kind of a day, just kind of like sitting in front of the fire. And I gifted the one of the cat dolls that I have made, and she loved it. This niece of mine, Emma, she is the best person to gift to because she just makes a huge deal about anything she opens up. And sincerely just like, I love it. I love it. She's so cute. And she was hugging it. She is a bit of a drama queen, so I'm sure that factors into her reaction. But it's joyful, and I love it. And she's really fun. But it's always fun when someone really loves and appreciates the things that you make for them. So that was fun. And she did look, to see her name embroidered onto the front with a heart. So they like special things like that. Who doesn't like a personalized special gift like that? Then we got back, and Monday I had to go to jury duty. Oh, yes. I brought knitting with me to keep myself busy there. And it was a large room, and I felt like I was back in the day in a large classroom. Everyone was kind of like quiet, but, you're just kind of doing a little people watching. And the guy next to me, he was erasing papers. He had this eraser. And he just kept erasing page after page after page. I don't know what it was. I kind of looked over there a couple of times, and I'm like, what could he possibly be erasing? I really have no idea what he was erasing, but he was doing it for 2 hours straight. It was crazy. But I had my headphones in, so I had my music to kind of like, distract me from the left side of my table. And I just was knitting, and no one else there had brought any type of crafty type of a project. I was a little bit shocked, I guess. I kind of I imagined that some other people would bring something like knitting, crochet, or even a little hand stitching, but nope, not in this group. I was the only one. There were some cancellations at court, and a lot of us were released early, and I was on to the rest of my week. There's a crochet hat that I posted in Mighty Networks, and it's really cute. I posted it because I was looking for an alternative to this beautiful crochet hat that is available to purchase on the Liberty website. but it's like upwards of $500. So I found this pattern that looks very similar to it. And I started to crochet it. And then I was like, no, I cannot continue this. My crochet stitches are very tight. The tension is tight, and there is this half double crochet, but not a regular one. It's sort of like crossed back or twisted. It creates like this cool little twisted design. And yeah, it was just not going to work for me. It was just hurting my hand too much. So I stopped and I said, there has to be a knitting pattern for a hat. There has to be one out there. And I did find one. It was hard though, because most sun hat patterns are crochet. And I kind of get that. I can kind of see like how a crochet stitch makes a better sun hat than a knitted one. But I found a knitting one and I did start that. So I'm really only at the very beginning, but already it's much easier it's much easier on my hands than the crochet one. Also, I have the wattle curve skirt pattern traced and cut out, and I'm ready to cut the fabric out. But gardening has really been taking the front seat for the past week and will be for at least another week or two until everything gets planted. So let's talk about gardening a bit. This past weekend was centered around getting our container garden planted. I got up super early, and that is actually a feat for me to do. I'm not a morning person at all, but my husband is right. And, he's always like, you got to get there early before the crowd, like right when they open up. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Well, I knew it this time because it's happened time and time again, and where he has been able to tell me, I told you so. So I did it. I got up early. I was really kind of excited about it. I mean, this was something planned we were going to do. And you know how like the Christmas poem is just like sugar plums dance through their heads, like when they were sleeping right before Christmas. Well, I had like flowers and of all different colors and types floating around in my dreams, and was very excited when I woke up to actually get ready to go to the garden center. We stopped at Starbucks first because that was definitely a requirement for me getting up so early. And it was on a weekend. It was on Saturday. So I'm like, oh, there's not going to be a work crowd there. There's not going to be a line. Wrong. There was a huge long line at Starbucks. And to top it off, their app was not working. I usually always pre-order, and when I go through the drive-thru, I can just say I have a mobile order for Stephanie, and boom, you're in. And I like it because you can customize all of your add-ins right there in the app and know that it's going to be made to your specifications. So yeah, I think I'm one of those, one of those people that get made fun of for like this ridiculously long drink order of, I don't know. I just can't even. I like coconut milk and extra shot, cinnamon, 2 pumps of vanilla syrup only, that sort of thing. So I just rather pick it out on the app and done. It's all done. But yeah, it wasn't working. So we had to order at the window. My husband hates to order my coffee drinks because he, thinks they're ridiculous. But so I kind of like shouted across from the passenger side what my drink order was. And the barista was completely fine with it. They knew exactly what I was talking about. So I'm like, there, hello. And my husband's just like, I don't have a red eye. I was like, whatever, so boring. Okay. Anyway, so that was our morning. And then we get to the garden center And we took Cooper with us. He stayed in the car for a little bit because it was still really cool out and we parked under a tree. But I did go back to the car and grab him pretty much right when we were about ready to check out. This garden center is dog friendly, which is nice. And yeah, I was pretty happy with what I got because last year I really wasn't that thrilled with the flowers that I got. And I think it's because when you're on a budget and you just, it's more, um, you get more for your money by buying like the generic filler plants like the super wave petunias and all those kinds of things. So this year I wanted some statement plants and flowers. And I diminished the amount of all of those, filler plants. And it worked out so much better. I passed on this last year and I saw this little beautiful dwarf spruce tree and it can be planted in a container and it only grows to about 3.5 feet tall. So, of course, my husband was trying to talk me out of it again this year, and I said, no. I passed on this last year, and I will be getting it right now. So I got that, and I also got a flowering rose bush because I do have the 2 bare root rose bushes that I had ordered in, the late winter. And those are not going to bloom until next year. So I still wanted a blooming flowering rose bush. And I got this one, it's called Cashmere. It produces a red flower. It's kind of like a hybrid tea rose. It says it has a light scent, but there were a couple of roses bloomed on there and they were beautiful. This really beautiful crimson velvety red rose, and it's meant to be cutting flowers. So I planted it. I got it and I planted it. I love it. It's in a large container. And that's another statement plant that I got. And then a couple other ones I got were mandavillas. I said that I wasn't going to get them this year, but I'm not putting them in these large containers by the trellis wall that we have because, like I said last year, it took them all summer to get to the point where they were mature enough and they had started to climb up the trellis by the end of the summer. So by the time they were like beautiful, full, blooming, bushy, like a vine that climbed up the entire wall, it was like October. So I was so just like depressed about that because I'm looking at this gorgeous, beautiful, wall of flowers that is about to be killed off by frost and the fall. But I just love those flowers they produce, and they flower at the entire season long, from beginning to late. They'll flower until frost, basically. So I got a couple of those. I got a pink one and a red one, and they are in smaller size pots, and they're going to be sort of like a standalone statement one. It looks fine. They look very full and nicely bloomed in the pot that they're in. And so I don't have to worry about like waiting for them to grow up a wall. And another statement flower I got is a purple button flower. This is a perennial. They have really cute little purpley textured flowers. They do look like a fabric covered button. It's very cute. And it's a perennial, so we'll see if it comes back next year, or if I might plant it into the ground before the end of the season. I'm not sure yet. And then, of course, the usual geraniums, wave petunias, and impatiens, plus the flowers that the the flowers that I grew from seed. Yeah, so I've got some petunias that I grew from seed. They're still really pretty young and delicate, so a few of them have not made it, but some of them have grown a little bit large enough. So I've got those, and I have some of the alyssum, which are they're low height. You know, they're nice like layering plants. They're low height and they're filler. So I have some that are white flowers and a couple that are pastel. So those I have been planting with the other flowers. So it really does help. It helped a lot that I could then focus on these statement pieces and know that I had grown these other things for filler pieces. Yeah, so it's going well. And it was so hot this weekend, super hot. It was in the 90s. It's in the 90s today. It will cool down by the time this podcast goes up later in the week, and we'll be at a really comfortable mid 70s temp by then. However, I got a pet pool for Cooper. And because I remember last summer when it was so super hot and it's just like you're melting outside. And I thought, it'd be nice just to have like a little pool to dip your feet in. And so I got this one, and it's specifically a pet pool. It's foldable. It's so easy to and it's not large. It's about 48 inches round. And, but Cooper really doesn't want to step into it. So we'll see what happens. And when I thought about it, he never really wanted to go into a large swimming pool either, because when we were up in Canada, they had a nice in-ground pool, and he could have gone in there. My husband's trying to get him to go into that pool, but no, he was not having anything to do with it. But he loves to run right into Lake Michigan, like this big, massive lake with waves crashing into the sand. But he's been doing that since he was a baby puppy. It's weird. It's kind of interesting to see like things that your pet has been exposed to and not, and what they're used to and what they're not used to doing and not comfortable with. So we'll see how it goes through the summer. But if anything, it'll be like a little pool for me to dip my feet in when it's super hot, and for when my little baby nieces and nephews come over. All right, I need to wind this chit chat segment down so we can get to my conversation with Vicki. So I'm just going to finish up here with what I'm watching. And one of the shows is called Wisting Season 2. This is a Nordic crime show. And I forget what channel. I think it's a Sundance Now, but it's also available on Acorn, and I'm sure maybe even like Amazon Prime. But it's Wisting Season 2, and there is a reference to quilting in one of the later episodes. There was a patchwork zipper box pouch. It was a police officer, and they had been like on this overnight, sort of no sleep, no going home, because they're like intently almost getting to the point of getting this suspect. So he's brushing his teeth outside, and he's got this zipper pouch, and then his his counterpart, the detective, is walking up, and he's like, "Oh, didn't I tell you so and so," which is his wife's name, "has taken up quilting. Yeah, patchwork." And he holds up a square patchwork design on this zipper pouch. I was like, "Oh, sure, go on, make fun of our craft, but you're using it, aren't you?" Yeah, he was using it. He brought it with him. He had the zipper pouch. And I think deep down, that character probably, appreciates and loves what his wife makes for him, even though it's not a real person. But they wrote it into the story like that. So, I know, it's just like, and then they do the same thing with knitting. It's just like, knitting is for grandmas. No, it isn't. And don't you wish you knew how to knit, right? Oh my gosh, I get really like defensive of our craft. and what we make. Another crime show that I watch is Bosch, but it's switched over from Amazon Prime to something else. Freeview, I think it's called. So it's the exact same show and it's a new season, but they had to give it a new name. So now it's called Bosch Legacy. And this one is where this detective is no longer a detective. He's, private investigator now, but his daughter has just joined the police force. So it's very interesting to see how she's learning, the business of becoming a police officer. Lots of action and that sort of thing. Mimi Rogers is an attorney on the show as well. Really good show if you like crime dramas. And then another one is called The Offer. I know I mentioned this before. There's only a few more episodes left in the season. It's on Paramount Plus, and it's called The Offer. It's really, really good. It's set into the early 70s, and it follows the Paramount Studios and the characters, the real life people of Mario Puzo, who wrote the novel The Godfather, and oh my gosh, I just had his name in my head and now it's gone. The guy who directed it. So it's good. It has some funny parts and, some not so funny, but it's a really, really good show. It's amazing that that movie even ever got made based on all of the, just the blocks that it had of people who did not want it to be made. Francis Ford Coppola. That's the name of that director. It just popped right back in my head. Does this happen to you? You have something in your head at 1 second and the next it's just disappeared. There's a new Star Trek show out. I don't know what it's called. It's Star Trek something, and it's pretty good too. I would never just watch Star Trek on my own, but because my husband likes it, it's one of his shows, so we're watching this show. But it's actually good. I actually kind of like this one. I don't really like most of them, but this particular one is pretty good, and that one is also on Paramount Plus. All right, this is one of my sort of I don't even know what you would call it, trashy shows that I watch. And the only housewife show that I still watch now. I used to watch all, the Jersey and the Orange County, Atlanta, but now I'm only down to one. It is the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. And I've been watching this one since the beginning. And as usual, there are crap stirrers and high ridiculous fashion, getting dressed up to the nines to go shopping. And there's a new character, Diana, and this woman is super rich. I think she's rich by marriage. She did not grow up wealthy, but you would never know it. And this one, she's going to give Erica a run for her money. Literally. So I see an interesting dynamic kind of building and happening right there with those guys. But yeah, Housewives of Beverly Hills. Now there's a new one coming out that I might watch to see how it goes. There's a Housewives of Dubai coming out. So I will see what that's all about. And if it'll be interesting enough to keep watching, because most of these shows are kind of now all the same and has heavily produced content, and you really don't know what's real, what's fake, what's sometimes they're fighting, but are they really, or is it just for ratings? I don't know. I can only take so much of that anymore now. All right, one more. YouTube. I started watching this channel, and this is a newish channel. She's only been doing videos since last fall, I think. Definitely just last year. And it's Andy the Maker. A-N-D-I. Andy the Maker. Oh, and she's in Dubai. Speaking of, she loves to sew. It's a young woman, a young mother. And her mother is a seamstress and taught her how to sew. Her mother-in-law also sews. She quilts and she makes dolls. So now they have a business together, and it's called Sew Natural. I'll put a link to the website, and they sell fabrics and notions. And Andy has a YouTube channel, and she does sewing tutorial videos, and she gives you ideas on what to sew and sell at like craft fairs or, anywhere you want to sew and sell things that you make. It's really interesting. I really, really like this YouTube channel. Okay, so one more thing before we get on to my chat with Vicki. I want to wish all of you a wonderful summer. Stay in touch via my Mighty Networks Make and Decorate Friends group on Instagram and Patreon for continued bonus episodes. If you join Patreon, you'll also get the entire back library of episodes to catch up on. If you record a voicemail on my podcast blog page, I will answer your question via email, and then I'll save it to play on an episode in season 5. So yeah, enjoy your summer, everyone, and I will look forward to a brand new season 5 coming up in the fall. All right, let us move on to my chat with Vicki Holloway. She's back to chat with me. I wanted to have Vicki back on my podcast because I listened to her podcast, and over the years we've become friends and have lots to chat about. One of the things I love is that we don't do everything the same, and we have different likes and dislikes of sewing, crafting, and gardening, and I think you'll enjoy our conversation. So here's my chat with Vicki Holloway from the My Creative Corner3 podcast. Today I have a returning guest, Vicki Holloway, and she is also a podcaster. Her podcast is My Creative Corner3. And she is a quilter and multi-crafter, just like me, loves to garden, and she makes fairy gardens. So I am really happy to have you back. Welcome back, Vicki.
Oh, thanks for having me back. I always enjoy talking to you, Stephanie.
Oh, yeah, me too. I like chatting with you too. And I hear your podcast a lot, and I'm like, oh, I want to have her on again so we can chat about this and that. Because you're a solo podcaster like me. And so when you talk about things, it's a little bit more like one-sided. I mean, of course, all of us out there are like talking back to you and saying stuff. But I think it's nice because you are a podcaster. So it gives your listeners and my listeners a chance to hear your side of things in a conversation style.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. And I don't have very many guests on. Just part of it's my schedule, and part of it is just technology, can be overwhelming sometimes, but it is so much fun to sit and talk. And I think every once in a while when I ask a really probably mundane question, I hear people answer in my head. I'm like, I know. But I do throw things out there too, so people can answer me, because I legitimately once in a while will have questions or problems, and I'm like, nobody knows the answer to. Do you? And I get people who do comment and give me tips and tricks and answers. So it's awesome.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, absolutely. I also want to mention you're located, because part of your podcast intro is that you talk about life in your northern town. So you're located in northern Michigan, like really north.
Yes, I'm not quite to the UP yet, but we're considered, if you're from Michigan, the UP is the Upper Peninsula. And for people who live below the bridge, we're in the northern lower. So we just shorten that to northern Michigan. So I'm close to probably 50 miles from what we call the tip of the mitt. And I also live in a high elevation. So it's a snow belt. It's a tourist area. We live not too far from a really deep wilderness area. So you can get lost in the woods. And we do that quite a bit. look for elk. There's an elk herd that lives close to us, and snow. That's most of my life from October through March is snow. So we are talking about that a lot on my podcast because people are fascinated with lots of snow.
Yeah.
This year, actually, we're a little bit behind. We normally get 140 to 160 inches of snow a winter. This year, we're only at 80. So it's been a travesty for everybody. I don't ski and snowmobile like the people in the county or people who come up north. But it's so funny. We went to go visit my parents who live downstate is what we call it, in Michigan near the Lansing, Flint area. And the number it was literally bumper to bumper of cars and snowmobile trailers and everybody coming north because we had snow and it was snowing Saturday. It was short-lived, but it's just funny. We usually get out of town on those kinds of days because you can't move around. It's kind of like, I don't know, have you ever been to Gatlinburg in the summer where, it gets like that up here, only we're a really small town. So
I was going to ask you that, like, what type of a town is it? Because is it like a suburb or is it like small town?
Small town. We only have a few thousand people in the town.
Okay. All right.
Maybe 10,000 in the entire county. So we are I-75 is the major 4-lane highway that goes all the way up through the UP and it goes all the way to Florida. We are a small town that when you pull off, there's everything you could need for gas stations, fast food. We do have quite a few big box stores for people who are traveling, can pick things up. So it is a tourist town. Now, what's super funny about our little town is in the 60s, they decided because we have lots of snow, we needed a theme. We had to have a theme downtown to draw the tourists to the downtown area. So they made it a Swiss theme. I'm like, nobody up here is Swiss, actually. The immigrants that came from old countries that settled up here were actually Polish. So we have Polish festivals and we have this Swiss Alpine theme. It's a very odd amalgamation of tourist themes, but it works. You come to our downtown area and it kind of looks like Bavaria,
Yeah.
only in Michigan. It's funny.
That reminds me of another place in Michigan that we went to. It's not as far north as you, but it's I think it's a ski resort. And there's golf courses there because my husband went there golfing and we went up there one time. What's it's called? It starts with a B.
Did you go to Frankenmuth?
It's not that. It's along the lake.
Along the lake. Oh, there's lots of beautiful places along there.
Is it
There's Boyne Mountain.
Boyne.
That's what it is. 15 miles from my house, actually. Maybe 20.
Really?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
wow. I went there years
and
years ago. Yeah.
So I live closer to the highway where they live closer to Lake Michigan, people on that side. So it's kind of like the great crossing of roads where I live, the major east-west and the major north-south. And so we get a lot of people just traveling.
Yeah.
And but it's fun to live in a place that still retains small town USA. I mean, it's really small.
Yeah, that's but what I love is on your Instagram how you post like on the weekends if you and your husband go out, on hikes or whatever, you have all these beautiful photos and videos of like you said, the elk. And the landscape, and then you go to some place where it has the little waterfalls, and it's just very, very nice to see. I just like seeing stuff like that.
It is. It is one of those things that we're very blessed to live here because there is a lot of beautiful places. Even though I've been to some of these places my whole life, it never ever ceases to amaze me the beauty that's out there. So nice. We really enjoy it, and I like to post about it. And I just think that it's interesting because a lot of people don't get to see what I get to see.
Right.
And I get it because when my husband and I were younger, he was in the Air Force. And so we lived in the desert Southwest for about 5 years. And I'm like, I took all those trees for granted. I didn't realize that people didn't have all of the water and the trees and the different climates like we do. Because travel 15 miles, 20 miles, looks totally different.
Right,
So it's a
right,
lot of fun.
absolutely.
So I like to talk about life in my northern town.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's nice, and people, you're right, people do enjoy hearing about it, because especially if it's very different from where they live. So you also curate a blog, with your sister Nancy,
Mhm.
right? And
Yes.
is that one the Sunday morning coffee blog, or is it a different?
We do,
My
a
Creative
lot of
Souls,
Our Creative
our
Souls, and
Creative
I do
Souls.
a segment of that on the podcast. Because my sister lives near my parents, which is a couple of hours south,
Okay.
but she is a very artistic and creative person, and we like to talk about what we're working on. And funny enough, a lot of times it's similar things, and so that's a place for me to post about non-quilting things, because sometimes people want to come to the blog and of My Creative Corner and just look at quilting things, and then I will share back and forth. But we
Hmm.
usually talk about knitting and crocheting and gardening and fairy
Hmm.
gardens. My sister does a lot of um, sculpting. She has concrete that she
Hmm.
makes into garden sculpture. She's made fairy gardens with concrete, planters. She also, shares about planting. She has so many garden different places, but she also does murals. She paints and all kinds of things. So right now she's loom. She had a loom knitting where you do it by hand, and now she has rheumatoid arthritis, so she has a knitting machine. So together we're talking about all the fun things that we like to do.
Hmm.
So we're doing yarn things right now,
Hmm.
and towards spring and summer we'll talk probably more about gardens and
Hmm.
fairy gardens and things like that.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. It's nice that you have a sister that you could share that with, because like in my family, I'm pretty much the only person who quilts and sews, and so that's why I am teaching my nieces and
Mhm.
whoever wants to learn kid wise. So
Exactly.
so I sew with my now she's 13. I can't believe it, and they live in Iowa, and they were just FaceTiming with me, and she's talking about getting her permit, driver's permit, and I'm like, wait a second, you're only 13. And my sister's like, well, there's farms here in Iowa, and they got to drive the tractors at 14 or something
Yes,
like
they
that. I don't
do.
know.
My
I'm
mom
like
did. My mom,
completely blown
she
away.
grew up on a
Oh my
farm and they did the
goodness.
same thing.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's great. My mom is a very avid quilter. So between the three of us, a lot of times, we get together and talk about things and share things. And my mom bought the long arm that I have, and
Hmm.
so she comes up in north and we do quilt camp from time to time, and she'll spend a week or
That's
two and she'll
fun.
do things, I'll do things. She likes the long arm but didn't love it. So when they retired and moved away from all of the snow, she decided that it could stay with me,
That's so
and it's at
nice.
the foot of my bed.
I love it. Hey, I would take a long arm anyway. Make
uh,
room in my little tiny two flat house.
it's wonderful to have one. It really is,
Hmm.
because trying to mush a big machine, a quilt under your little machine, I found it very difficult. Um,
Yeah, I do too, because I think the older I get, I start to feel it in my shoulders when you're trying to hunch
yeah,
and you're moving this fabric. And also I think it would help more if I actually like had a sewing table where the sewing machine was flat with the table surface,
mhm,
because part of that is your hands are raised up and that hunches your shoulders up
yes,
when the sewing machine is like 4 inches above the table surface.
that's what I have, and you
Yeah.
do get it in your neck. The thing too about a long arm is you have your quilt on a dedicated machine. It's
Hmm.
all set up. I have one thread that I use, one type of
Hmm.
um, basic, batting that I like the best. So you don't have to mess with tension much,
Hmm.
and off you go. So I can spend a few minutes on that machine, a few minutes on my sewing machine,
Hmm.
a few minutes on my Cricut, and life is good.
Yeah, it's nice. It is nice to have a dedicated one for that. So we'll see one day, because I'm even like toying with the idea. Well, maybe I should get like a sit down long arm first, or I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I'm always looking, but it's not the time yet.
Oh,
It's
I know
not
what
the
you
time
mean.
for me yet. It's down the road. But it's nice. I like to be able to look forward to that though, because, I've already like gotten, you know, the serger that I want and the sewing machine. You know what I mean? So it's like if
Yes.
you have everything, then there's nothing to look forward to.
Exactly. No, it's true. And then you can practice doing different things, learning different
Hmm.
skills. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. So you're quilting your quilts now, and you're doing like you were doing this spiral pattern, which is really nice. And I like how you do your little short videos about that. Anything else? I think I saw you actually just this morning. You did a little video where you cut squares for 9-patch
Yes,
blocks
I've been
on
doing
your
that
Cricut.
on my Cricut. I
Nice.
bought a maker. So just so people know, if you're going to buy a Cricut for cutting fabric, you need one with a rotary cutting wheel,
Yeah.
and that is the maker, not any other
Right.
machine. And I have to say it's awesome because, if you do have arthritis or hand injuries or limitations, it's also you can just put your piece down, and
Hmm.
squares are super easy to cut, and you're off to the races. You'll have a whole stack cut in no time.
Hmm.
It's a great way to scrap bust too. So like you just cut out your sheets, put them down, the machine
Hmm.
cuts them. No, it's not as fast or super fast. I'll say that much. So if you
Hmm.
buy one thinking that you can crank them out real quick,
Hmm.
but you can probably cut them faster with the rotary cutter by hand. But when you have a bad day and your fingers don't want to work, it's a great
Hmm.
option. So so I've been doing that. I've kind of slowed down, over the pandemic and taking in quilts, but a lot of my friends are calling me again.
Hmm.
So now I have a whole bunch of quilts, coming this week, and I have a few. And I like doing the little mini swirl spiral things and curls. It's a nice go-to stitch
Uh-huh.
to do
Yeah.
on the long arm. I do feathers and custom work too, but life has changed over the last couple years. We've
Yeah.
all had to really evaluate how we're spending our time,
Hmm.
and I like to do lots of things. So sometimes the pressure of taking on a quilt that has to have a date, like graduations and weddings, that got to be a little tough with my full-time job taking a huge change since the
Yeah.
pandemic started. It got
Yeah.
very, very busy. So I'm tired. And so I'm kind of taking a little more time. I think it's not to say I'm not taking quilts in. It's just I'm spending more time doing self-care,
Yeah.
because when your work is hard, you don't have 4 to 6 hours in a day to dedicate to another job. I'm
Right.
tired.
Yeah.
My brain is tired sometimes. So
Yeah.
it's a lot of fun to have things to look forward to and things to
Hmm.
try.
Hmm.
And I'm
In a more
I'm
relaxed environment that you're not like, oh, I have this deadline.
yes, and I've not taken on as many sew along collaborations and
Mm.
things like that either, because I'm like, I have so much fabric in this house, because part of what I've bought, part of it is I inherited it, some of it. And I'm like, I just want to explore things I want to do with color and practice different things. Maybe make some things that are a little simpler. Like I've been doing Irish chains over the last 6 to 9 months. I did a single Irish chain, and now I'm doing a triple Irish chain. And it's great because the Cricut can help me cut it out.
Hmm.
But, quilting is one of those things that you're always learning. And I
Mm.
felt like I needed to practice more on using color with what I had and
Hmm.
trying to do scrap quilts versus purchasing a line of fabric, because I like to do that too. But it's it's not as much decision making you have to make, right?
Right.
And picking pulling your fabrics, that I can't believe how long it takes. I had forgotten that part of
That's
making a
one of my
quilt.
favorite parts of it, though.
It is. And I had
It
gotten
comes
away
from my
from it.
design background, though. So I pull fabrics for a living for
Mhm.
people as far as like upholstery and drapery
Sure.
fabrics. But when I started quilting, though, there is a difference because when I started quilting, I was pulling fabrics and that would work together. But they were either like the patterns were too big and it didn't look like how I wanted it to after it got cut
Exactly.
up. And then I was also buying yards instead of like, I only need a third of a yard for this part of it.
Oh,
So,
exactly.
so that was like a
Exactly.
transition, but now I'm transitioned and I love pulling fabrics for projects. And I know that, sometimes people that's the hardest thing for them to do. And other people, it's been a creative process where they don't want to. They want to just do it as very spontaneously.
Yes.
But I'm different that way, I think, just because of how I've been trained in a
Sure.
design process. And I enjoy having this overall picture of my project and
Mm-hmm.
color palette. I love doing color palettes and then pulling the fabrics and knowing what I'm going to do. But I am getting myself out of that. And I did take a 4-year break from sew-alongs and quilt-alongs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just signed up for one this year. It's with Quilt Folk. And it is.
That looked like a fun one. I
Yes,
did
it
see that.
does. And it is going to take me out of my comfort zone because it's improv.
Yes.
So that's where I'm going to be like, oh boy.
Oh, yeah. Improv is a lot of fun. I have done improv quilts before, and I've taken a couple classes over this last year on color and scraps because I don't have an art background, and mine is more in healthcare is my background. So not in music. So, so that's where we're leaning on my sister, who is an artist and has more art
Yeah.
theory and color theory. She can help me with those.
Yeah.
But I thought, I kind of gotten away from it too. And that's where this year I'm like really want to focus on refreshing my brain on color and color theory, yet still have a little bit of flexibility. So like the Irish chain I pulled, and now I'm looking like, I think I need more colors. But what's cool about them is you can mix them in as you go a little bit and not do any damage to the blocks that I've already have, because you can mix them up.
That's true. Yeah, I'm doing an Irish chain right now too. It's a commission for my client.
They're so pretty.
Yeah, and I think it's my first one really of a big Irish chain quilt. So it's fun. I'm doing all of the strips. You do the strips and then you can cut them down to sizes and stuff. So it's fun. I like it. It's basically it's like the one shape that you just kind of turn around.
And it can be kind of
different
zen.
Patterns. Yeah.
You can get chain piecing with it. And I can sit down and chain piece a whole bunch of different things. And then, which I don't normally do. I'm a one block at a time person and I like cutting one block at a time. But this takes me out of my comfort zone of let's cut a bunch up and let's just kind of sit down and chain piece a few and then assemble your 9 patches.
Isn't that a little freeing though? I find it is when you can chain stitch.
And I can sit there and go, all right, now I can actually really focus on a pressing plan and make this thing flat. And sometimes, you can have a disaster on the back of a quilt with twisted stitches if you don't pay attention to how you're pressing, which I can get lazy with from time to time. So, yeah, it's been fun.
Oh, that's good. So you're working on the 9 patch, and are you working on Irish chain as well, or?
I am. I'm doing a triple Irish chain. So the block itself is 9 patches.
Oh,
so
okay.
They become very large. And then I've resurrected, after taking a long break of about 9 months, a Dear Jane. I had started that at the beginning of the pandemic, and it's very hard. There is no doubt about it. It takes you out of your comfort zone. It's also something that I'm practicing scraps, but it's also doing all of those techniques that I've never tried. And then there's a lot of applique, and we're talking, these are 5-inch blocks that probably the original Jane Sticko, who made them, did them by hand.
Oh yeah.
So I ran into a problem because I thought I do foundation paper piecing a lot and I love it. But then I ran into the book I have and the electric quilt add-on. There's no directions. You just pull up these blocks and you're like, I don't even know how to begin to do all this curved piecing. So I found a really, really fun website, and it is called Scrap Stash. And this person really did a great job in giving block by block tutorials. And I'll have to send you a link, Stephanie, to,
Okay.
I think it's Hobby Stash. I think I got their name wrong. Dear Jane. Yeah, it's Hobby Stash.
Okay.
So what's great about it is there's a block by block tutorial that you can print off and take to your machine. And she also gives you the foundation paper piecing. She gives you templates, however you want to do it, and how she problem solved how to do it. And she is got the center part of Dear Jane done. And now she's working on the border triangles. And I'm like, this is awesome, because sometimes you just have a block, a total block. And that's what happened. I had 2 curved pieces. They were too small. And then that translated over months to where all of my blocks were the wrong size in my head. They had to all be wrong. I was going to have to start all over. This was ridiculous. You know how you do this self-talk where you're like,
Yeah.
I just need to throw this whole project away and start over, which is the messy middle. I just think we all go through it in the middle of the project. I'm like, what was I thinking? This is too hard for me. I got them all out. It was just those last 2 that I did that were the wrong size, and I couldn't figure out how to fix them. So there's some pretty novel ideas on how to make them. And I did one. It's not exactly perfect, not at all, but it's not exactly the way I like. I might remake it just because I'm practicing using my machine, and I think I need to adjust the stitch width. But it was great because I'm like, wow, somebody in the middle of making it is writing tutorials. So you're not digging up information that's out of date or something that maybe doesn't make sense because it was so long ago when they did it.
Right.
It's fresh right there. So I would say, if you're working on a Dear Jane, prepare yourself. It is not a 1-year project. It's a many-year project.
I have the book. I've had it for a few years, and I've been thinking about it and hearing other people that are making it, and putting all that together in my head. And I'm thinking, if I wait to make this, like all the little 4-inch blocks original quilts, I may never end up doing it. So I want to start off. Maybe I will, but I want to just get myself started. So I think I did get that add-on for EQ8, and I haven't really played with it yet. But they have bigger sizes, so I want to probably pick some of the blocks and make them a bit larger.
Yeah, probably like 8-9-inch blocks, even
right.
good size. Yeah. Because those teeny tiny little curves,
I think they're 4-inch blocks, aren't they?
Yeah,
it's really tiny.
So 5, and then they're 4.5-inch finished is how they're set up. And you're looking at a double. They're almost like double drunkard's pass, where you have a circle in the middle that's pie shaped, and then all the colors are alternating on the outside. There are some that are clover leaf shaped. Some of them, and I look at them and I panic because I'm like, I don't even know. I know some people who do them all English paper piecing too. I mean, there are those, but it's just, no matter what you do, it's a slow project. And I'm looking for that in my life right now. A slow project.
So it's nice to have one of those.
Yes. Put it away when you're done and you need a break.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that because I think the smaller size, the 4-inch size, was meant for hand stitching. And it's, the curves and all of that stuff is meant for the hand stitching.
Absolutely.
At the start. So translating it to machine stitching is a whole nother thing. Yeah. And foundation paper piecing, a whole nother, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and picking fabric with tiny prints.
Yeah, because a block that tiny. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to be very careful in fabric choices. And so it's a huge learning. So that's why I've gone back to refreshing my memory about some of these basic principles of quilting and color theory, because if you make a fabric choice mistake in your tiny block that you spent hours and hours making, you get super frustrated. And it's just, but you can also use, the Cricut to cut out those curved pieces if you want to do them by hand. I know a lot of people do. But so far I'm following my website here at Hobby Stash, and
Okay,
she's
well,
got
we'll
some
put that
great
link on
ideas.
there for sure, because that
Hmm.
probably is helpful for a lot of people. I want to take a look at that too, to see.
And if I get the center done, then I might actually try to do those triangles. Those are the ones that look completely overwhelming to me, the outside triangles.
Oh,
Woo!
yeah, yeah. It's probably not as bad as it looks, but
No, they might be easier.
yeah,
Probably.
I'm thinking it
It'll be
might be
all that
easier.
fear for nothing.
Right, right. So let's segue over to knitting.
Hmm.
And you and I are both knitting the same project
Yes,
in
the
process, the
elementary.
elementary wrap.
Yes.
And I heard it on your podcast, and then you were saying that also Kristen Esser
Hmm.
was doing it, and I even think Frances
I think she
as
is too.
well.
That's what
Yeah,
Kristen had told me. And I'm like, oh, that sounds perfect for me
yeah.
because I like Zen knitting. When you start having to, I like cables are pretty and all that, but when you start really working on a project with lots of intricate counting and stitches, I'm knitting in the evening, so I'm tired. But this is great because it's stockinette and just have, a couple of different changes at the beginning and the end. And I have a funny story about my yarn. Is it's called Transitions, and I have had this yarn, I am not kidding, for probably 10 years sitting in my stash. And when Kristen told me it was, a fingering weight yarn and it was just stockinette and did I want to join? And I'm like, that would be a perfect wintertime project. But I made a mistake is that I used straight needles, which is what I had on hand versus buying circular needles, which is what the pattern calls for. So mine is a real pretty yarn that was designed as one huge skein, and it was $40 10
Ooh.
years ago, which is a huge amount of money for
Yeah.
me. I don't normally spend that much money. I opened up the pattern. I looked at this yarn that you have to draw through a hole in the box because it's not spun. It's 4 tiny little strings of yarn that make up one yarn piece. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what have I done when I bought it? And the pattern was too hard. So it's actually turning out to be quite beautiful in this very zen stockinette stitch. I did a swatch, which I don't normally do, which always, you should.
Mhm.
And I calculated how many, to cast on, and I followed the pattern. And what's beautiful about Transitions yarn is I thought, it's like, when you buy things for quilting, you buy it and you're so afraid to cut into it because it's so beautiful and you don't want to wreck it. And I spent so much money on it. And this goes from amber colors, from gray to burgundy, and it's going to go into a pinks and then to something that's a very, very dark. Now, I'm showing it to Stephanie here on our call, and I'm only about 2.5, 3 feet into it. And
you're a lot farther than me.
So slow. I am so slow. But I'll show
you mine. Okay. So it's a single color.
That's beautiful.
I had twice the amount done. And 2 weeks ago, I pulled it all back because when I held it up in the light, there weren't holes, but they looked like holes, and it was a tension thing.
Yeah,
and
I have a couple
I'm like,
of those
I'm like looking at this, and I'm like, oh, I don't know. And then I have
a couple where I think I even maybe dropped the stitch but picked it up, like the stitch later. And I decided I'm leaving it because it's going to tell the story of me being so scared to try something because I spent a lot of money on a high quality thing that I did it and it's not perfect and I'm going to wear this.
Yeah,
what I like about
I plan to wear this too.
So beautiful.
And
the
then,
texture.
And then this yarn also, I just innately like to make things difficult for myself without even realizing it.
I do the same thing.
So this is like what is it? Alpaca.
Oh,
And
yes.
so apparently when I read up on it, it's a little bit more, uh, it's a little trickier to work with,
It is. It
but
kind of slides on my
yeah,
needles.
it does.
So
Yeah.
mine is a 52% cotton, 48% acrylic. And it's I like cotton to wear because
Yeah.
I'm very rosacea pink most of the time. And so cotton doesn't give me as much
Uh,
itching and redness.
yeah.
But I love alpaca, but
Yeah, me too. So they
unfortunately
call it
all
the
that
poor man's
wool.
cashmere.
Yes, yes. And I thought, this is it's a great pattern. It's a free pattern. They, of course, are promoting their yarn. And I thought, I have this $40 skein of yarn that I've lost and found 3 times
Hmm.
in 10 years. I found it. I'm going to use it before I lose
Yeah.
it again.
I'm not good at, I'm still I would consider myself now a confident beginner. I really kind of started this. I started and stopped knitting like a few times over
Hmm.
the past 15 years.
Sure.
But this time it's like for real and I stayed with it. But, uh, it their yarn is beautiful, but like you said earlier, I mean, it's so pricey.
It
And
is
this
very
takes this
expensive.
takes multiple skeins, and
Hmm.
their skeins are tiny, and they're like almost $30.
Yep.
So, but I love going on the hunt and like places like Webb's and that other one. There's a few of them, and
Like
then
Knit
I
Picks
buy
and Jimmy
knit
Beans
picks,
and
yeah, and I buy like
yeah,
these closeouts of these nicer yarns, and it's much
yes.
more reasonable. So that's
And that's what I normally do
that's how I
too.
knit because I don't know. And the other reason why I wanted to do this is because I finally learned how to do a purl stitch that I'm comfortable with. And I got it and I can make it look nice. So this was also kind of like a technique builder for me as
Yes,
well.
it
So
is.
I like this. I like this elementary wrap. I like that all of you guys are also doing it as well. And
And there's
so
no winners and losers on how
no,
fast we get it done
no,
because
yeah.
Kristen's way ahead of me, but she is a much faster knitter and she knits socks all the
Yeah.
time. So this fingering weight yarn, sock yarn, is comfortable for her where I feel like I have to go real slow and it's dark this time of year. So I have to have all the spotlights on in my living room so I can see.
Yeah.
And I know Francis has been plugging away at it too. So
Uh,
it's just fun to
yeah.
because it's one of those things that during this time of, the pandemic, and now we're getting to where they're going to call it endemic, I guess. But we're still on a lot of lockdown up here
Mhm.
lockdown in the fact that, the hospitals are full still. And I personally am not going to a lot of places because there isn't anywhere to go if you were to get sick. Okay. So that's my choices on that.
Mhm.
But this is a way for all of us, even across the miles, to reach out and still go, hey, have you been working on that at all? No, not this week. How about you? Maybe once, but
Yeah.
it's a way to bring us together. And I think
Right.
quilt-alongs and sew-alongs are the same for a lot of people too, if
Right.
they have, communities where you can chat. But this is
Yeah.
just a nice, slow stitching,
Mhm.
no pressure, no timetables
Mhm.
with something beautiful.
Yeah, and I put this away for about a month. I haven't worked on it because I switched over to some sewing projects, but I'm gonna come back to it now that I finished what I
Same
wanted to
here.
finish.
I put it away for a little bit over Christmas and
Mhm.
I was crocheting. I
Yeah.
still am crocheting. And since I crocheted so much, I gave myself a little tendonitis in my dominant hand. So I'm
Oh,
putting the crocheting
yeah.
down for a little bit.
I've done that.
Yep.
Yeah. I did
Yep.
that with the knitting when I was first learning
Yes.
and how it was so much of a struggle for me to like get those movements down. And I held my hands and
Just so
the
tight.
grip was so tight. And after a while, so I had to stop that too. But that's why, like, when I learned this purl stitch that I learned, it, you could knit and knit and knit and you're fine. Your arms and your wrists and your hands are fine.
Yes.
It's that Arne and Carlos Norwegian purl where you don't have to pull the yarn up to the front. It all
Cool.
stays behind the needle.
I will have to look at
It's a
that.
little bit more like twisty whatever, but
Mhm.
once you get the
Mhm.
and I'll send you the video
I would
because
love
it's
to see it.
really great. Arne or Carlos does it, so it's very hard for me to learn from Arne because he's so fast.
Yes.
When he does his tutorials, He's like,
in there.
he's like,
did you speed that up? No, that's just how fast he knits.
yeah. And he's like, oh, it's so simple. You just do it like this. And he goes, la, 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 with his needles.
Yeah,
I'm like,
beginner,
okay.
slow down.
All right. I just didn't see one thing that you just did.
No.
So
No,
Carlos did it.
Because so a super funny story about knitting is I taught my daughter how to knit like I knit. And I'm left-handed. I never had anyone show me how to knit. I learned how to knit out of a book. And then one of my friends whose mom is British, I showed her my knit and she goes, yeah, that looks great. Only it's not the right way. I was knitting kind of backwards, where I was knitting in the front of the loop instead of the back of the loop. So if you were to knit in the round, my daughter called me, why is this hat all twisted like a barber's pole? It's not working. And I go, I don't know. She goes, is this how you knit? And I go, yeah, that's how I knit. Anyway, we both learned in the last year and a half or 2 years that there are multiple ways to make a knit stitch. And if you don't want them to twist, there's a certain way to make them. So that's my reason for the elementary wrap is to knit in the traditional manner, so you're not twisting the stitches.
Okay.
But I'd love to learn the purl, because that's where I drop them a lot, is on the purl stitch.
Yeah, so I'll send it to you. And I like how Carlos does. He's like, it's like a cha cha cha, because at first you'll think, oh my gosh, you're twisting and doing like this, but once you get the 3 little movements, it's a rhythm, and it's so much easier, much easier on your wrists and your arms, and you can get fast at it. So yeah. I was just like, oh, thank God, because I was almost about to have to give this up because for some reason I can't do the purl stitch.
No, purl is a challenge for everybody. And that was the thing that when Kristen said they were doing it, she goes, I hope you like to purl, because you get 100 and some across to have a purl stitch.
I know. Yeah, so true. But yeah, that's great. I'm glad that I learned about this from you and that Kristen and everybody. So it's fun. It really is fun. Hey there, me again. I recorded the Chit Chat segment before I edited our conversation and realized that we had talked for almost 2 hours. See what I'm talking about? Like, talking with Vicki is so easy, and it just, time goes by and you don't even realize it. So what I'm going to do is break this up into 2 episodes. So probably I will hope to try to get this up by next week. If not, it'll be like the usual bi-weekly upload. But you will have a whole nother hour of me and Vicki chatting away at all of our crafts that we love to do. I hope you enjoyed the conversation so far, and check out the show notes for all the links that we were talking about earlier. And I will talk to you again. So it's not the end of the season, I guess. To be continued. All right, take care, and chat with you next time. Bye-bye. If you would like a bonus episode every month, become a patron and support the Make and Decorate podcast show at my Patreon page, Make and Decorate. For extended show notes with links and photos to what we've talked about, visit my podcast blog at makeanddecorate.com. And remember to take some time for yourself to be creative. Bye-bye.